They say a man becomes the land he works. If that's true, then I'm 800 acres of sunburnt grit, stubborn mesquite, and soil that never gave me a damn thing without first taking blood. My name's Jax Mercer, 52 years old, patched into the Iron Serpents MC since I was 20. Most men my age slow down, knees give, backs fold, memories soften. Not me. Life never gave me the luxury. I stayed sharp because out here, softness gets you buried. The property sits 2 hours west of Albuquerque, where the desert starts looking like it wants to swallow the sky whole. My family's had this land for 4 generations. Though if you asked any of them ghosts what they thought of me holding on to it, they probably wouldn't recognize the man I became. Hell, most days I barely recognize myself. I was tightening a loose hinge on the barn door when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Nobody comes out here without calling first, and those who forget usually regret it. I wiped sweat off my brow, pushed my sunglasses up, and walked out from behind the barn. Saw the car first, black Mercedes, shiny enough to look like it had melted straight out of some rich man's fantasy. Didn't belong out here. Wilderness hates clean things. Then I saw him step out. Clay, my little brother. 10 years since he'd left New Mexico, and damn near that long since I'd heard his voice. He'd been a skinny, mean-eyed kid the last time I saw him, angry at the world and aiming that anger at anyone within arm's reach. But the man stepping out now, he looked like money had done its best to polish him, but old bitterness still clung to him like dust he couldn't wash off. He smiled, one of those tight practice smiles people learn from lawyers or liars, and I've never been able to tell the difference. Well, he said, adjusting his sunglasses like some big city shark, place hasn't changed much. No, I said, feeling my jaw tighten. It hasn't, but you sure as hell have. He chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. People grow up, Jax. Grow up? Maybe. Sell out? Definitely. His smile vanished. Good. Truth never sits well on someone who's used to hiding behind bullshit. He walked a slow circle, hands in his pockets, boots kicking at stones like he still had some right to the ground beneath him. That pissed me off more than anything. A stranger I can run off. But Clay wasn't a stranger. He was blood, even if our veins had long stopped flowing in the same direction. Finally, he turned to me. I'm here on business. Don't recall us having any business. You will. He motioned toward the car. 2 men stepped out. Suits, black ties, shiny shoes sinking an inch into my dirt. Lawyers. Christ. One of them opened a folder and cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer, as you may know, your family land was never properly divided after your father's death. Under New Mexico inheritance law, I held up a hand. Stop. You think you're going to come onto my property with paperwork and city shoes and tell me how my life's supposed to work? Clay stepped closer. I'm claiming my half, Jax, legally. Officially, I want the land. My land. My chest tightened, not with fear. Fear's something I learned to carve out of myself a long time ago, but with something older, something meaner. Territory, instinct, a kind of primal ownership born from decades of sweat and scars. You haven't set foot here in a decade, I said. You didn't help bury Dad. You didn't help fix the fences after the fire. You didn't even call when Mom died. Clay's jaw worked. I had my reasons. Yeah, I said, stepping toward him. You always did. His eyes flashed. Not anger, but calculation. Clay never fought with fists. He fought with angles, leverage, pressure points. And he'd just found one he thought he could break me with. I want my share, he repeated. And trust me, Jax, I'll get it. For a moment, the desert went dead quiet, like even the wind wanted to get out of the way. The suits shifted nervously behind him. Outlaws make civilians twitchy, especially when their voices drop the way mine did. You're making a mistake, I said. Clay smirked. No, I'm correcting one. Then he and his little entourage turned back toward the Mercedes, as if they hadn't just walked into a rattlesnake pit and kicked it awake. I watched them drive off until the dust swallowed the car whole, and standing there on my own land, sweat drying on my neck, heart beating slow and heavy like a drum before war, I realized something I never wanted to admit. Clay hadn't come back for money. He'd come back for power, for legacy, for the one thing neither of us had ever truly owned, the truth buried in the soil. And if he wanted to fight, he'd just stepped into the wrong man's shadow. Clay's Mercedes had barely disappeared over the ridge when the old familiar rumble of a V-twin rolled up my spine like a memory with teeth. Not many bikes could still make me straighten my back after all these years, but his always did. A beat later, the old Road King crested the rise, coughing smoke like it had been dragged straight out of hell, and sitting on it, hunched but unbroken, was Riker. To most people, he was Old Man Riker, the retired enforcer for the Iron Serpents MC, the kind of biker who'd survived more knife fights, shootouts, and bad decisions than the rest of the club combined. But to me and Clay, He'd been something else entirely. He'd been the closest thing we ever had to a father. Riker cut the engine and slid off the bike, boots landing hard on the dirt. He looked older, much older, than the last time I'd seen him. The weight had melted off his frame. His beard was gray, his braid thin. His cough sounded like gravel being poured through metal. But his eyes, still sharp enough to pin a man to the wall. He studied me for a good long moment, then jerked his chin toward the road Clay had taken. "I saw the pretty boy Benz," he rasped. "Didn't know Vulture's upgraded to luxury cars these days." I let out a slow breath. "He wants the land." Riker snorted. "Of course he does. Kid always wanted what wasn't his." I didn't answer. Not yet. Some things still sat raw under the skin. Riker walked past me toward the house, stepped slower than I remembered, but still carrying the old iron beneath. I followed him into the kitchen, where the sun cut through dusty windows and painted the room in gold and regret. He lowered himself into the chair at the head of the table, my father's chair, and for a moment the past hit me like a sucker punch. Clay sitting where Mom could see him. Me sitting close enough to Riker to feel safe. Dad's shadow filling the doorway. The sound of doors slamming, fists hitting walls, hushed whispers trying to hide bruises. Riker cleared his throat and snapped me back. "You look like hell, Jax," he muttered. "Funny, I was about to say the same to you." He grinned. Crooked? Familiar? Getting old ain't for cowards. I poured him a glass of water. He ignored it, fishing a flask from his vest instead and taking a long pull. The smell of bourbon hit the air, thick as memory. "Start talking," I said. "You didn't ride 3 hours in that condition just to comment on my brother's taste in cars." Riker leaned back and let out a long, tired sigh. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was the sound a man makes when he knows he's about to dig up bones better left buried. "I heard Clay was back," he said quietly. "He's been sniffing around town for a week, asking questions, stirring up shit that shouldn't be stirred." "About the land? About your father?" Riker corrected. That froze the air between us. I stared at him. Hard. He died in a wreck. Everybody knows that. Riker's eyes closed, like he'd been waiting decades for someone to challenge that lie. "He didn't die in a wreck, Jax." The room tilted just enough to make me grip the edge of the table. "What are you saying?" Riker opened his eyes, and the weight behind them made my skin crawl. "I'm saying your old man didn't lose control of that truck." A pause. "I'm saying someone helped him meet the road head-on." A long silence swallowed the house. Outside, the wind pushed against the siding like it wanted in on the truth, too. "You're telling me he was murdered," I said slowly. Riker didn't flinch. "I'm telling you he had enemies, and one of them paid for justice the outlaw way." My jaw tightened. "And you never said a damn word to me?" "You were 18, Riker snapped. "You think you were ready to know the man you hated was worse than you imagined? Or that the only reason you and Clay weren't orphaned years earlier was because some of us in the club stepped in?" I felt my pulse hammering in my neck. "Clay doesn't know any of this." "No," Riker said, "but he found something, documents, old club gossip, pieces of truth without the context to keep him from twisting it." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "And now he thinks the land is payment, or inheritance, or revenge. Hell, maybe all three." I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. "What does the land have to do with what happened to Dad?" Riker looked at me, not like a mentor or a father figure, but like a man who'd watched too many good kids grow into broken men. "Because the land wasn't supposed to go to both of you," he said. "It was meant for you alone, Jax. Your father left it that way." My chest tightened. "That's impossible. Clay was his son, too." Riker's jaw clenched. "Not by blood." That hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I stared at him, disbelief choking my words. "What the hell do you mean?" He exhaled, long and ragged. "Your old man wasn't Clay's father. Your mother, she was lonely, hurt, looking for a way out. Clay was the result." The world seemed to freeze, then shatter. Clay wasn't my brother, not by blood, not by birth, not by the man whose shadow we spent our lives trying to crawl out from under. My breath came heavy, uneven. "He doesn't know, does he?" "No," Riker said. "And you don't want to be the one who tells him. That kid's been chasing identity his whole life. You rip away the little he thinks he has." He shook his head. "He'll burn everything, including this land, to the ground." My stomach twisted. A storm was coming, and the desert hadn't seen one like this in years. "And you," I said quietly. "What are you doing here, Riker? Really?" He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw fear in the old man's expression. "I'm dying, Jax." The words punched the air out of me. He nodded slowly. "Doc says my liver's quitting. 6 months, maybe less." Silence stretched long and bitter. Before I go, he continued, I need to set things right. All the lies, all the secrets, all the shit your father left behind that I tried to bury for your sake. My voice sounded far away. And what do you want from me? Riker stood, bracing a hand on the table. I want you to protect what's yours. Clay's not thinking straight. And there are people whispering in his ear who'd love nothing more than to see you two tear each other apart. He stepped closer, gripping my shoulder with surprising strength. And I want you ready when the rest of the truth comes out. The rest? As if what he'd already said wasn't enough to split our world open. Riker turned toward the door, his boots dragging slightly as he walked. You and Clay were raised the same, he said without looking back. But only one of you was born into the violence that created this land. He stepped out into the fading light, leaving the door open behind him, leaving me with a truth that tasted like gunpowder. Clay had come for what he thought was his birthright, but he didn't know he never had any claim to it at all. And worse, he didn't know the kind of man he was about to go to war with. The desert has a way of warning you before trouble comes. Air goes still, animals hide. Even the sun feels like it's holding its breath. 3 days after Riker told me the truth, the land had gone silent. Too silent. I was checking the southern fence line when I found the first cut wire. Clean slice, sharp, not a coyote or stray bull. Somebody had done it with purpose. A message. I followed the drag marks through the dirt until I reached the arroyo, where 2 of my cattle lay gutted open, their throats slit, bodies still steaming in the morning cold. Clay had escalated. Not Clay himself. He didn't have the stomach for handiwork like this, but someone he'd brought in, someone who wanted me rattled. I crouched beside one of the carcasses and pressed my fingers into the warm blood soaking the sand. My hands didn't shake. They hadn't in years. Violence doesn't rattle men like me. It clarifies us. A low rumble rolled across the canyon. I looked up and saw dust rising from the ridge. 2 trucks, dark-tinted windows. Slow, deliberate approach. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and waited. The truck stopped 30 yards out. 4 men stepped out. 3 strangers. One familiar silhouette wearing expensive boots and an expression that made me want to break his perfect teeth into gravel. Clay. He walked ahead of his hired muscle, arms spread, like this was some kind of civil conversation. You see what happens when you don't cooperate, Jax? He called. I didn't move. You cut my fences. You killed my cattle. He shrugged. Just sending a warning. This doesn't have to get ugly. It already is. He smirked. Then maybe you should sign the papers. I stepped closer until he was just a few feet away. The morning sun caught the dust on his fancy clothes. He didn't belong here. Not in this world. Not on this soil. He looked like a child pretending at being a man. Clay, I said quietly, walk away while you still can. He held my gaze and something flickered behind his eyes. Fear, maybe, but wrapped in arrogance thick enough to smother it. You don't get it, do you? This land was supposed to be ours, and I'm done letting you control everything. Everything. Funny how little he knew. One of his men stepped forward, a big slab of muscle with prison ink running down both arms. Boss says you got one more chance to cooperate. I looked Clay dead in the eyes. You don't want a war with me. He straightened, jaw flexing. You're not the only one who knows people, Jax. That stung deeper than it should have. The brothers we grew up with weren't biological, but the MC. That was blood. And now he was threatening to replace it with mercenaries. Before I could answer, a voice cut through the air like a knife wrapped in whiskey and smoke. Boy doesn't even know the meaning of war. Riker? He rode up slow, stopping beside me. He didn't take off his helmet. He didn't need to. His presence was enough to tilt the balance instantly. Even Clay's hired guns shifted, uncertain. Clay glared at him. You again. Riker's voice came thick, ragged. You step foot on Jax's land again, and I'll bury you so deep the devil will need a shovel to find you. One of the mercenaries reached for his waistband. Riker's hand dropped to his own holster with a speed I hadn't seen from him in years, a ghost of the enforcer he used to be. I raised my hand, signaling calm before the desert lit up with gunfire. Enough, I said. Clay, take your men and go. Clay hesitated, teeth grinding. I'll be back with a court order. You do that, I stepped forward. But next time you cut my fences or kill my animals, I won't be this polite. Something in my voice made even the tough guys take a step back. Clay spat in the dirt, turned, and climbed into the Mercedes. The trucks followed him out, engines fading into the distance until only the wind remained. Riker exhaled and slowly climbed off his bike. He leaned against it, gripping the seat until the shaking in his hand stopped. You shouldn't have come, I told him. Yeah, he wheezed, coughing hard enough that it bent him forward. But I did. I helped steady him. His skin felt like old paper, thin and warm. You're getting worse. Clock's ticking. he muttered. Which means we're running out of time. For what? He looked at me long and heavy. To finish the job your father started, and the one I failed to. Those words sat wrong in my gut. Riker motioned for me to walk with him. We moved toward the barn, slow, dust swirling around our boots. You think Clay's angry because of the land? He asked. He wants power, I said. No, Riker said. He wants identity. He wants to belong to something real. He's built his whole damn life on lies he doesn't know are lies. I didn't answer. I'd been turning his earlier revelation over in my mind nonstop. That Clay wasn't my blood, that the land wasn't his, that our whole childhood had been built on a foundation cracked by betrayal. Inside the barn, Riker lowered himself onto an old crate and rubbed his temples like he was holding his skull together. Your father? He began, then stopped, swallowing hard. Your father was angry when he found out about Clay. Angrier than I'd ever seen him. I kept him off your mama. Kept him from doing something stupid. But it didn't stop the damage. What damage? Riker's eyes found mine, tired, haunted. Your father changed his will. Left the land to you alone. Said Clay could fend for himself. Said he wasn't going to raise another man's mistake. My fists clenched. God, the old bastard. Even dead, he kept poisoning us. But Clay never found out, Riker continued. Because before your father filed the final paperwork, circumstances changed. Circumstances, I repeated. You mean his death? Riker nodded. What aren't you telling me? I pressed. He looked away, and that scared me more than anything he'd said yet. I tried to protect both of you, he whispered. But Clay, he's not done digging, and the deeper he digs, the more danger we're all in. Before I could demand answers, movement outside caught my eye. A figure standing near the fence line. Clay, watching us. No lawyers, no mercenaries. Just him. Stay here, I muttered. I walked out slow, boots crunching loud enough to announce I wasn't sneaking. Clay didn't move until I was close enough to see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. You think I'm the bad guy, he said quietly. I think you're lost, I answered, his lip curled. You always thought you were better, the strong one, the real son. He said it with too much weight. My pulse skipped. He didn't know, but he sensed something. Clay, I said, choosing my words carefully, you're stepping into things you don't understand. You mean things you kept from me? He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the fear under his cologne. You're hiding something, he said. Riker is too, and I'm going to find out what. He turned to leave, but paused. When I do, he said, voice cracking, I'll burn every lie down. And if you stand in my way, brother or not, I'll take you down too. He walked off into the dying light. And for the first time since this all started, I knew Clay wasn't just after the land anymore. He was after the truth. And truth, once it starts bleeding, never stops until it takes someone with it. Some nights, the desert talks, mostly in whispers. Wind slipping between mesquite branches, old wood creaking in the barn, coyotes testing the edge of the darkness. But on the night everything finally broke, the desert didn't whisper. It howled. A storm rolled in from the west. Dry lightning, jagged forks splitting the sky, thunder that rattled windows. It was the kind of weather that reminds a man he's small, a guest in a land that answers to no one. I was on the porch, sharpening my knife, when Riker came stumbling out of the house. He had a hand over his ribs, breathing sharp and shallow. Not the usual cough this time. This one had an edge of panic. He's gone, Riker rasped. Who? Clay? I stood. What do you mean he's gone? Riker braced himself against the railing, coughing until blood flecked his beard. He took something from the shed, a box your father kept locked. Clay must have found the spare key under the eaves. My heart dropped into my boots. The box. The one Dad had told me never to open. The one Riker said should have been burned decades ago. What was in it? I asked. Riker wiped his mouth and shook his head. Not here. Ride with me. I'll explain on the way. Lightning cracked overhead, splitting the sky wide open. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to wait for morning. We saddled up, me on my blacked-out Dyna, Riker on his wheezing Road King, and rolled into the storm. The ride into the dark. The wind hit us hard, sand scraping our faces like 1,000 tiny knives. Rain hadn't started yet, but you could smell it. Clean, electric, dangerous. Our headlights cut thin tunnels through the darkness as we tore down the highway, engines roaring against thunder. Riker kept glancing over at me, eyes glassy in the strobing lightning. He knows everything now, Riker shouted over the wind. What exactly did he find? Riker's jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. The storm swallowed the road ahead, but I pushed faster. Finally he yelled, He found out what your father did before he died. What he did or what happened to him? Both. Oh, my stomach nodded. Start talking, old man. He hesitated just long enough to scare the hell out of me. Then he delivered the truth like a hammer to the chest. Your father didn't just change the will. He threatened your mother, said he was going to take you away from her and send Clay to a boys' home because he wasn't his blood. My hands tightened on the grips. And your mother, Riker said quietly, she came to the club for help. My breath froze. You mean, yes, Riker cut in. The club intervened, but it wasn't supposed to go the way it did. Rain finally broke, sheets of water slamming the asphalt, turning everything into a blur. I slowed enough to hear him clearly. Your father was drunk, Riker said, waving a gun, screaming he was going to kill her for betraying him. We were there to calm him down, but someone acted first. I glared at him through the rain. Who? Riker didn't flinch. Me. The storm swallowed my breath. You killed him? He was firing wild, Riker said. One of those bullets almost hit you. You were standing in the goddamn hallway, Jax. Don't you remember? Memory flashed, shouting, glass shattering, Mom screaming, Riker pulling me down, the deafening crack of a gunshot. I'd buried the rest. We staged the crash, Riker said, voice breaking. To protect your mother. To protect you. Clay was never meant to know any of it. My blood went cold. The land, the will, the lies. All of it built on a death I never understood. And now Clay knew. We crested a hill and saw headlights below, parked crooked near the old windmill. Clay's Mercedes. The confrontation. We rolled to a stop. Rain hammered the ground, turning the dirt into a black mirror. Clay stood in front of the windmill, the metal box open on the hood of his car. Papers flapped in the storm, old deeds, letters, photos, the will my father never got to file. When he saw us, his eyes were wild, broken, desperate. You lied to me, he screamed. Riker shouted back, Kid, listen. No. Clay swung the box, sending papers flying. You lied about everything. My father, my blood, the land, all of it. He pointed at me, rain streaking down his face. And you knew, didn't you? You always knew you were the real son, the rightful heir, the favorite. I didn't know a damn thing, I said. Clay laughed, a cracked, hopeless sound. You had everything, Jax. The club, the land, Riker, Mom's pride. And what did I get? Scraps. He stepped closer, shaking, fists balled. I just wanted to belong, Clay whispered, to something, to someone. Lightning lit the sky, and I realized he wasn't here to fight me. He was here to end something. He reached into his coat. Riker yelled, Clay, don't! But Clay wasn't drawing a gun. He pulled out a photograph, one of Mom holding me as a baby. Clay nowhere in the frame. I never had a place, he sobbed. Not even then. The rage drained out of me. All that remained was grief. Clay, you may not be my blood, I said, voice breaking despite myself, but you were my brother. Every damn day. Every fight. Every scar. You don't need land to belong. He looked at me, hope flickering faintly. Then lightning struck the windmill. The blast knocked us flat. Metal shrieked, sparks flew. Clay stumbled backward, slipping in the mud, and his head struck the iron base with a sickening crack. I scrambled to him, but the moment I saw his eyes, I knew. Clay was gone. Riker dropped to his knees beside me, rain dripping off his beard as thunder rolled like a funeral drum. This wasn't supposed to happen, he whispered. I swallowed hard. None of it was. The final truth. We buried Clay at sunrise on the back ridge overlooking the valley. No coffin, no service, just stones stacked careful in a silence heavy enough to crush bone. Riker leaned on his shovel, breath shaking. I need to tell you the rest, he said. There's more? He nodded slowly. Your mother, she didn't just come to us for help. She came to me. He paused. Jax, she wanted out. Out of the marriage, out of the fear, out of the life your father trapped her in. Pain twisted in my chest. And you helped her. Riker's eyes softened in a way I'd never seen before. Jax, I loved her. The words hit like a fist. All the pieces clicked into place. The way he protected me. The way he never let my father near me when he was drinking. The way he showed up to every birthday, every game, every moment Dad didn't. And then the last piece slid into place, cold and undeniable. Are you saying you're my father? He didn't answer with words. He just looked at me, raw, terrified, hopeful, and I knew. I stumbled back, air punching out of my lungs. My whole damn life. Every scar, every ride, every lesson from this man. I wasn't raised by Riker. I was raised by my father. He placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. I didn't tell you, Riker said, voice cracking. Because the club, your safety, Everything depended on keeping that secret, but I couldn't die without you knowing who you really are. Lightning cracked overhead, but the storm was passing. Slowly, painfully, I nodded. Then I bury him as my brother, I said, looking at Clay's fresh grave. Not as a rival? Riker wiped rain from his eyes, though the storm had long stopped. You're a better man than your father ever could have been. I looked out across the 800 acres, our land now, in truth and blood, in a way I never had before. Let's go home, I said. Riker smiled faintly. Lead the way, son. And for the first time in my life, I believed the word.